test today. I know people are still coming in from the exhibit floor, exhibit show, but one of the things we're trying today is, you guys build networks upon which a lot of technology resides. So we are going to take questions on tweeting if you want to tweet, or you can do it the old-fashioned way and ask them live. We've already got some in the queue, and with that, let's see if we can use that technology. So allow me to introduce the moderator of this session, which is David Bronston. David focuses his practice on telecommunications infrastructure and has extensive experience with network licensing and the intersection of telecom infrastructure and real estate. Please join me in welcoming David Bronston.
Thanks, Tracy. And, people, when they moderate panels before lunch, they say that's a mistake, but I actually think it's a good idea because everybody's hungry, and they're hungry for information. And some people don't like the second day because a lot of things have already been discussed, but I think that's good because you find out what topics are trending, what issues are important. And we're going to be able to follow up on some of those and drill down on that and get other perspectives. But mostly here's a chance to really talk to the people who are making, installing, selling the equipment, putting the boots on the ground, turning the screwdrivers, and basically people involved where the rubber and the fiber meets the road. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves going down the line. Just tell us your name, your company, and what you do for that company. We'll start with Mike P. at the far right.
My name is Michael Pelletier. I'm the Director of Wireless Programs for KGP Logistics, and I help manage our wireless programs.
My name is Ed Myers. I got to make up my own title at Parallel Infrastructure, so I am the Director of Strategic Initiatives and Business Development, just because it's the longest title in our family, so that's why I got to do it. We're a tower company, if people don't know, based in Coral Gables, Florida, but have nationwide assets, about 1,200 that we've built and managed over the past 4 years that we've been around.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Jones with Advanced RF Technologies, or ADRF for short. I'm the West Region representative of our company. We do a lot of modular RF repeaters, high isolation antennas, as well as a modular fiber DAS. It's a pleasure to be here.
Art King, SpiderCloud Wireless. We build indoor systems, small cells targeted at buildings from about 50,000 to 500,000 square feet. So just the indoor game.
My name is Fakri Sadeh, and I'm the Director of Engineering for American Tower. I lead the engineering team for all non-macro sites, which includes DAS, small cells, Wi-Fi, all these evolved solutions that we will be talking about, I'm sure, quite a bit today.
Good afternoon. I'm Patrick Lau with CommScope. And the group I work for, CommScope, is called Distributed Coverage and Capacity Solutions. What we do is provide the DAS and small cell equipment as well as the services and then enhance the coverage and capacity business. I've been with the company for 15 years, leading the business development activities in the Americas region. And glad to be here. Thank you.
Great, and feel free to raise hands, tweet, keep it clean if you would, and I've already seen two three-letter acronyms that I needed help with, so that's part of being in this field, I know. But you know what my favorite three-letter acronym is? It's TLA, which stands for three-letter acronym. So. Why don't we just jump right into Ed? I wanted to know about positive train control. You guys have really created a niche in that area, and it's a niche, but it's a huge potential niche. And what's happening with it? We know it's going to come eventually. And I come from the Northeast. It's been we've had a lot of disasters there, but. Not to be flip, what's going to happen to great movies like Unstoppable, Runaway Train, Buster Keaton's The General? I mean.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Parallel's heritage is really in the railroad. Our owner owns the Florida East Coast Railroad, which runs from Jacksonville down to Miami. And they're actually developing a brand new passenger rail system called All Aboard Florida, connecting Orlando International Airport to downtown Miami, where passenger will be able to jump on the train in Orlando, 2.5 hours later, jump on a cruise ship in Miami and extend their vacation that way. So pretty cool stuff that they're doing in that all aboard Florida region. But we started building towers on that railroad property about 4 years ago in Florida, and have since now managed quite a bit of property for the NSF. We have access to the 32,000 miles of
NSF, come on, 3-letter acronym.
Burlington Northern Santa Fe, and the Union Pacific.
Without 4-letter acronym,
Yeah,
sorry.
so we have about 60,000 miles worth of railroad track that we manage today for telecom development. So we're very interested, obviously, in positive train control and what's happening there. We don't necessarily provide any infrastructure for that, other than putting up a wireless pole where the railroad may need it for their design. But positive train control is that system by which the train should be able to remotely be stopped, given an appropriate space, from anywhere on the track. And it looks as though it's been about between $7 and $10 billion has been spent in deploying positive train control so far. And it was supposed to be completed across all the Class 1 railroads this year. It is not going to be completed by this year. And in fact, they've kind of recently thrown into the budget the national budget, a 3-year extension in the positive train control. It hasn't been ratified yet, but the Senate and the House both have agreed that should be extended. Mm-hmm. So the opportunity for both small cell as well as, and Mark Gansey kind of laughed at the mini macro idea, that is still a real viable thing. The interesting part about using railroad property is if you put something up infrastructure-wise, maybe it's a 40-foot pole that they need for wireless backhaul for positive train control or for the train system's own use, it is actually preempted from zoning. So as long as it's for primary railroad use, the FRA, the Federal Rail Administration, actually has the zoning authority over that railroad right-of-way, not the locality. So when we put things up for the railroad, and we have in the past, usually the railroad likes to own that stuff, which isn't necessarily our business model, but they can put it up, and they can put it up ostensibly unzoned and unpermitted if they want to, and then it's co-locatable. Now, we like to go through, and I think it's the correct thing to do, is to go through the local zoning process to make sure that if the train is using it, and then Verizon or AT&T or T-Mobile or somebody like that wants to come and co-locate, they can come and co-locate on a facility that has actually been zoned and permitted properly. And then the environmentals are always kind of interesting to go through on the railroad property as well.
Not an exclusive issue for the railroad.
Correct.
Why don't we go to the tweet that's on the screen? The radio network is always changing. What low-cost strategies are available for DAS Wi-Fi small cells to maintain original KPIs, SLAs? Patrick, we can just go down. I'm sure everybody has a thought on this. Why don't we just go down the line? Patrick?
Great. Thank you, David. And I think we've seen and witnessed that, and I think in-building wireless is changing. We're going through some sort of a transformation. It's gradually changing to the enterprise market, and the requirements for the enterprise market is really different and somewhat different from the operators in the large venue requirements. And there are several things I think came to mind. Is traditional, if you're talking about traditional DAS and the architecture, you get a fiber in combination with a coax, is mainstream by and large. A lot of those DAS deployed in the field today. The low-cost strategy, I think you can add a lot of features to improve the installation cost as far as the integration, either as a cabling or commissioning or testing. There's some vendors out there, I think you can make it, cabling is automated, and do the PIM testing as far as you can measuring the gain and all sorts of that implementation phase of the DAS. I mean, let's face it, you still have to go through, doesn't matter how large or small part of the job, you have to go through design, planning, and installation, and you're talking about commissioning and testing. And all those kind of phases you have to go through and make those processes more streamlined, automated, and I think is one of the strategies. As far as this newer generation of the DAS, or as far as moving towards the enterprise, and I think some of the vendors in the market, you see is more towards the digital. And as far as the cabling, and I see more and more, the enterprise is more enterprise-friendly cabling structure as far as Ethernet or fiber cabling. You can really, the convergence of using this cabling, you can carry both wireless and wireline the signals, and that certainly you can, by way of reduce or save the cost. And one last thing I think I want to talk about is some of the projects, a lot of times it's probably in our industry, people you know it, and integrators or vendors. Some of the DAS projects, the head end is huge. It's the equipment room for the real estate. If you go into a very high profile venue, whether it's a sports venues or other large casinos, and those rooms, I mean, high real estate, and some way you can, if you can find a way to remove those head end locations to further less expensive real estate areas, and that's another way to save the cost.
Yep. Yeah, Fakri, you have demanding clients who want both SLAs and low costs. How do you see this?
Yes, certainly. I think that's another sign there, or another evidence that the in-building space is changing dramatically. 15 years in the industry, 13 of those years working for the carriers. Been on this side now for less than a year and a half. And I can tell you this, from a carrier perspective and how this is evolving, also, we really didn't care as much about the in-building space, but again, because of the data growth, explosive data growth, the smart cells, smartphones, LTE and what that brought about, social networking, this has become so critical that now we're talking about KPIs for in-building systems. I mean, I remember when we would ask a neutral host company like American Tower to design these systems, as long as we flood that venue with signal, I'm happy. There wasn't really anything about KPIs. Of course, things are changing. SLAs are demanding that we have reliability of these systems and availability to meet certain standards. And I think at the heart of it is how these systems are built. It is an evolution that's taken place within the hardware itself. As Patrick mentioned, with respect to these digital systems, they're almost self-optimized in a way. But also goes with that the technology itself. The advancements, the features that are coming with LTE and LTE Advanced are going to help that self-optimized networks. Automatically generated neighbor lists will also be part of that. So it's really going to be a combination of the equipment, the installation and how we build these systems, as well as the technology that will provide for the KPIs and SLAs required by today's standards.
Thanks. Art, you have a small cell solution at SpiderCloud, Cisco and Verizon. I'm sure you have a thought about that being a solution to this problem.
Yeah, actually, what we build reports into the operator standard platform. So like in the Verizon network, on the ALU core, we report into the APLNT platform, and on the Ericsson core, we report into the EPLNT platform. So we do metrics and KPIs just like the macro network, so there's nothing new to do. The bigger conversations that are going on are around how to report to the enterprise in a friendly manner so that they can understand what the data is, because cellular is wildly different from the enterprise market as far as Wi-Fi, and so you can't really speak cellular to an enterprise person. You have to speak and somehow map it to the Wi-Fi paradigm that they live in. So that's I think the next leap forward is exposure of element management or information such that the enterprise is feeling informed about what they're investing in their enterprise.
Mike, ADRF have a position on this?
Oh yeah, definitely. So ADRF typically works a lot with the carriers as well as the contractors, the integrators, basically, that are out there with their feet on the street making the actual DAS itself get turned up on time, and of course, doing the optimizations and whatnot as well. I want to say in the last year or two, I think the enterprise and public safety model of business has really been creeping up and getting more popular, at least with our clientele. So a lot of times when we approach contractors, even enterprise customers, we try to evaluate the business case first and foremost, right to the point of keeping it affordable and keeping it logical at the same particular point in time. I think eventually one of those particular key elements of the overall process getting evaluated before it's actually executed for any particular DAS is actually the carrier coordination piece. It's very important. I think a lot of us have to make educated assumptions at the forefront to try and make sure that we're actually vetting a customer properly. The carriers already do that for their own particular projects, but we've had to do that more prevalently on the ADRF side when talking with our different integrator customers for either public safety projects or even enterprise-funded neutral host systems. So these are all just the nuances that come along with the overall business case, and of course with ultimately making the customer happy with an affordable DAS solution that they probably even want to afford themselves. So I mean, when it comes to taking care of clientele, we like to push the whole idea, the concept itself of modularity, but at the same point in time, reinforcing the concepts that we know that the carriers are eventually going to look for in terms of what's currently overloaded as far as capacity, what's the next level of offloading that particular area for capacity constraints, and yet making the enterprise customer happy. Those are the things that we work on doing gradually on our side with different integrator partners. So again, that modularity concept plays a role in it, but at the same point in time, coordinating or at least encouraging the coordination with the carriers to make sure that you're enhancing their network the appropriate way.
If I could, I just want to skip to Mike P. Because you know, the logistical end of cost effectiveness and lowering costs and cost effectiveness really goes to the heart of what you guys do. So,
I think you get your notice to proceed. You realize you need to start buying materials, and you start looking for where you're going to get it. And you know, distribution gives you the ability to buy pretty much everything you need for that job in one place, on one PO, one neck to choke. You know, it ultimately gives you the you know, flexibility. Another thing that you know you've got with that is once you get the notice to proceed and you start to do the install, you buy stuff, and your clock starts at what you got to pay. So being able to be flexible with terms and being able to provide options for customers so that they're not having to figure out how to get this thing done, worried about getting paid and having their business go under, is something that we can help with.
Great. So. I'm going to take the next question. What are the top 3 most common technical challenges while deploying DAS and small cells? And I'm going to do the same thing, go down the way. Pat, I know CommScope, you have converged infrastructure, I think is the term of art. If you can tell us what does that mean, you know, dollar-wise or otherwise?
Sure. Thank you, David. And I think the same thing goes, the question is similar to the last one. You're talking about the whole process of deploying a DAS projects and going back, and I think it's something new to the people here. You have to do the design, installation, commissioning, optimization. And I think if you evaluate all these areas, and the one thing's a challenge of what you have, the larger the projects you have, installation, usually people, they run into issues, is errors. I mean, when you build a system, how do you know this port goes to the other port, or how do you know do it correctly? When you do different sectors, how do you know you're hooking up to the right remotes? And also the commissioning or testing, and that entire process is very time consuming. And the challenge of what you have is you have access to certain venues, and you have access to the equipment, and quite frankly, during the busy time, the access to the resources, because a lot of times those very highly trained engineers and technicians, and they're the bottlenecks. They're really hard to get. So the challenge when you get to is, and how do you do in a project, and you have 2 weeks to do it and turn out, and you plan for 2 weeks and only have 3 days to do it. I think those are the things that go hand in hand, and I think that's what we have seen in our applications.
Okay.
I think to add to that, though, interference and how you manage interference is key, kind of just to get too specific. I'm kind of being the engineer in the room. Interference and how you mitigate that. Installing equipment that is PIM rated. This has been a shift that also caused a significant increase in cost for these systems. But you need that again because LTE is much more sensitive to PIM and PIM issues than we had with voice services. Another aspect is the optimization piece of it, which goes hand in hand with interference. But I'm mentioning optimization here because I'm referring to the macro side of also the network. The systems need to play nice together. If you don't take that into account, and if you don't look at the whole kind of, in a way, the whole environment, the whole RF environment, whether it's DAS or small cells or a macro that is outdoor macro, you need to manage that. Managing the environment, managing the RF environment is truly at the heart of what's a technical challenge for deploying DAS in small cells.
Art?
From our perspective,
Small cell.
the deployment is done by Wi-Fi style people. So the typical people that would hang an AP would deploy our technology because it just uses kind of standard Ethernet cable, a lot of enterprise technology. So we tend to run into issues with if a good site survey wasn't done in advance, because with small cells, a lot of times you design off a floor plan and go out, and then you like fight with macro interference, you know, when it hasn't been done in advance. So, you know, we've got a lot of our installers now using like the IBWave mobile planner to, you know, do a lot of this stuff in advance cost effectively. But then when you're installed, waiting for backhaul, it's sort of not really a technical challenge, but it's a process challenge that the operators are facing, that the system goes in so fast. You're in 3 days, and then in 45 days you have your backhaul arriving. So it's just it's a little bit of an issue of, you know, process change.
Okay, Mike, take a shot.
Yeah, oh no, more than a shot, I think. When it comes, so to piggyback on the last two comments and to do the question, I guess some slight justice on the technical side, I'm trying to like narrow it down to 3, quite frankly. When it comes to the small cells topic overall, it's still very much in its infancy. I think a lot of us keep getting continuously reminded about that. Traditional DAS is really nice, of course, for your larger venues, larger overall solutions that have to get implemented, of course, multiple sectors and whatnot, a lot more capacity that's really being demanded by the overall, you know, customer, or at least the solution itself. When it comes to a small cell being deployed out there in a given project, for example, aside from the key point being backhaul, dedicated backhaul for that particular small cell solution, you also have the fact that it's one carrier's particular solution. Of course, now the end customer doesn't usually realize that. They're looking for maybe AT&T, Verizon, all the 4 major carriers. They're not looking for just one particular carrier's solution overall, because then what's everyone else going to have to deal with? So at this point in time, small cells are nice. They're still in their infancy and they're continuing to develop. But at the same point in time, you have the customer who has their phone walking through. A small cell maybe actually does get deployed. Different PCIs, different neighbors, different actual carriers get introduced into that particular phone's vicinity. You need dominance to the earlier point. If the macro hasn't been properly surveyed ahead of time or hasn't been taken into account, the phone's not really going to behave any differently. Not only that, when you have small cells, multiple ones deployed across a given particular construction or any facility, that multiple soft handoff doesn't really do you that much good for your phone. You have to really carefully manage those particular details. A legacy DAS makes that more streamlined, in my opinion, at least with the current technology today. I'll stop there.
Ed, what are you guys doing?
Ours are not really technical challenges per se on the tower side. We have probably 3 good ones though. One is financial, which is setting the proper financial expectations from the landlords. They're used to saying, hey, my rooftop is going to cost you $4 grand a month to get on, and then you go to a municipality and you go, no, really, we want to put up a pole and we're going to pay $250 a month for that. So it's really a re-education of the landlord about what an outdoor, if it's an outdoor DAS or a small cell, what that's really going to be worth financially to them as a landlord. The other kind of dovetails into that, which is zoning and permitting. Again, not so much a technical challenge as it is a bureaucratic challenge associated with this, because you still, you know, it's an